It's 4 p.m. and we're bringing you the developing news and the stories behind the headlines. This is Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez. Here are some of the stories we're watching this Friday, July 12. The Department of Foreign Affairs vows to uphold maritime peace despite unlawful actions in the West Philippine Sea. That's as we mark the 8th anniversary of the landmark 2016 arbitral ruling that has voided China's sweeping claim over the West Philippine Sea. For his part, Defense Secretary Gibo Teodoro underscored ongoing efforts to protect the country's sovereign rights. Beijing has never acknowledged the Hague ruling. The Anti-Money Laundering Council freezes the bank accounts and other assets of suspended Bamba Mayor Alice Go. The freeze order also covered high-value assets of individuals known only as Zhiyang Wang and Bao Yinglin. And one of Apollo Quiboloy's co-accused in a string of criminal cases is now in police custody. Pauline Canada was arrested in Davao City yesterday after an anonymous caller tipped off her location. Quiboloy and 4 of his other co-accused remain at large. All are facing charges of qualified human trafficking and child abuse, and there are rewards for information on that will lead to their arrest. Joining us today, Ana Marie Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star and Storycon's resident political pundit, Ronald Llamas.
Happy 8th anniversary.
Friday.
Happy 8th anniversary, Ami.
Happy West Philippine Sea Day.
Yeah, so and Ronald, kasama doon sa picture taking, sa historic picture taking na yun sa The Hague.
Photo bomber.
Nasa harap ka eh. Nasa katabi mo ata doon
Si Reichler, yung head ng legal team, tsaka si Justice Carpio, tsaka si Secretary Del Rosario. Andun si Kwan, sa likod ko si nung panahon na yon, Ambassador Manalo sa UK, na ngayon ay Secretary of Foreign Affairs, at saka si Menard Guevara, na noon ay Undersecretary.
And I think we have to say na ang official head ng delegation was the Solicitor General then,
Hilbay.
Florin Hilbay.
Florin Hilbay.
Yes, So, I mean, Ami, what do you have on your front page layout for Friday? I mean, is it a slow news day or?
Medyo slow, but we are watching developments related nga to that, the 8th anniversary of the arbitral ruling. Inulit ng US and France yung call nila on China to comply with the arbitral ruling. Ang nagsalita sa US, both their ambassador, si Mary Kay Carlson, and of course the Secretary of State, si Anthony Blinken. Dito yung ambassador nila, si HKU, na sumulat din ng isang araw na yun nga calling on China to comply with international rules. Tapos ni-reiterate ni Senator Santiveros yung proposal niya to declare July 12 as a West Philippine Sea Victory Day. Yung iba naman nasabi nila West Philippine Sea Day na lang daw. At saka tinitingnan natin baka may mahuli-uli dyan sa mga co-accused ni Apollo Quiboloy, kasi sabi ng mga authorities his world is getting smaller. Kaya baka siya mismo makuha, medyo malaki-laki yung award, yung reward, 10 million.
Do we know, Ami, kung who put up the reward money? I mean, has that been disclosed?
Ayaw sabihin ayaw daw siguro magpakilala ng mga basta sinasabi lang ng DILG is the private sector. Hindi ko alam kung ano exactly yung legal rules dyan, pero yun nga kine-question ng company Quiboloy, di ba? Na hindi daw pwede. Although alam ko may mga instances na talaga nagbibigay ng reward ng private sector. In fact, yung ibang victims ng families, they can contribute to a reward.
Yes, ginagawa yun in the past. Ginagawa yun in the past.
Okay,
kaya hindi naman nila pinapursue yun.
Yeah, but quite conceivably, itong reward na to that's coming from the private sector, at least part of that money,
yes,
it would be political. Hindi naman kasi, it's not as if na pamilya ng biktima ang nagbigay ng pera. In this case, it's probably
politicians.
Political supporters. Let's put it that way.
Pero delikado si Quiboloy dyan dahil kung madagdagan yung mahuhuli, baka kumanta.
Yes.
Baka
Yan
isagipin
na nga.
yung kanilang sarili, mag-witness protection, at baka may kaunti silang alam kung nasaan talaga si Kibuloy. Maliban pa doon sa mga
Unless totoo
crimes.
ang nasa China na siya, no? Unless totoo ang nasa China na siya.
Oo.
Kasi alam naman natin, kahit yung, remember the siblings Dargani dun sa family, kung hindi napigilan dun sa Davao, nakalabas na sila, di ba? On a private plane.
Pero may
So, hindi
extradition
rin natin-
treaty tayo sa sa
Yan na
China.
nga eh.
Ibig sabihin, kailangan nilang i-honor yon dahil kung hindi
Yes.
nila i-honor, pag yung may
Yeah.
hinahabol naman sila
Compulsory
mga
yun,
criminal
ah.
dito, baka hindi na natin isuko. Di ba? Ganun yan eh. Mutual yan eh. It's a treaty.
Yes, compulsory yan.
It's a treaty kasi, yung
Yes.
extradition na yan.
Okay, but this is, Ronald, this is Kibuloy. This is not just a ordinary person involved in a crime, no? I mean, he would count as a political ally of
Hindi lang political ally.
China.
Hindi lang political
in the scheme
ally.
of things, no?
BFF ni Digong eh. Mismo si Digong naging administrator eh. Di ba? Hindi simpleng relasyon yon. Pero mo, papahawak mo sa isang tao yung lahat ng iyong properties, no? Para administer. Ibig sabihin, malalim yung ugnayan.
Okay. Can we
Yes.
bring back
Saka
that photo
napakalaki
from...
ng China, ha? Maraming pagtataguan dyan.
Huwag na lang nila aminin siguro. Can we bring
Kaya
back
nga.
that photo from The Hague that we posted or we showed a while ago? Kasi may gusto lang ako tanong kay Ronald eh. Hindi yan.
Sige.
si Ronald doon sa The Hague. Yan, nasa harapan si Ronald. Lahat kayo, nag-usap ba kayo kung anong kulay ng tie ang gagamitin?
Hindi.
Hindi. Wala naman ibig sabihin yan.
Hindi ko na napansin yun eh. Ang sa akin, violet eh. Violet
Oo,
na.
nasa harapan dyan si Ronald, katabi nung Amerikano, nung puti, nung European or whatever, at ni Justice Carter.
Buhay pa si Pong Biaso, no?
Yes.
Siya yung, pag may mga problema, siya yung nilalagay ko sa likod ko eh, para enforcer.
Okay, Ronald, tell us about this picture. Una-una, ano ba ginagawa mo dyan nun? may naging contribution ka ba naman dun sa pangyayari sa The Hague?
Well, dapat kasi hindi pinag-uusapan yung role ko dyan. Well, basically, yung role ko dyan, political. Dahil yung kaso, hindi lang legal eh. May political implications. Halimbawa, meron diyang mga observers na Malaysian, na Indonesian, na Vietnamese, etc. So, kakausapin mo yon. Dahil naghihintay sila pinoobserbahan nila kung mananalo tayo eh. Dahil makikinabang sila eh. Kaya kakausapin mo yan. No? At minsan may mga kaunting problema, hindi ko nasasabihin kung ano, so kinakailangan tumulong kami ni Pong Biason para ayusin yon. No? Parang hindi naman lahat yan smooth sailing eh. Dahil first time yan eh. So may mga counting dynamics, may mga counting mga gusot, no? etc.
So kayo yung mga walang alam sa batas,
Oo.
pero kailangan dyan.
Oo, kami yung pag sinabihan kami ni Florin Hilbay, pakiayos nito. Gawin mo ito. Susunod kami, no? Pero dahil nandyan si Pong Biason at mukha siyang tiger look. Siya yung nilalagay ko sa likod ko. Sabi ko, huwag ka na lang magsalita. Doon ka lang sa likod ko, titigan mo lang. No?
Pang pa-intimidate, may ganun bang strategy dyan?
Huwag natin pag-usapan kung ano mga...
Okay.
Ronald, yung touching base mo, dahil political liaison ka, di ba?
Yes.
Yung touching base mo with other countries, anong reaction nila? Initial.
Masaya
nung
sila.
na yung ruling.
Masaya sila dahil ang kine-question natin dyan, yung 9-dash line ng China.
Yes.
Na ino-occupy yung more than 90% ng South China Sea. Tinatamaan sila ron eh. So masaya sila dyan sa kaso na yan. At medyo bilib sila dahil sila, pinag-aaralan nila, pero hindi sila nangahas na magsampa ng kaso. Tayo lang yung medyo may counting ganon na nagsampa ng kaso sa China, di ba? Kaya medyo amazed sila.
Ko, meron bang ganong reaksyon na parang ganon nga ang takbo nung impression nila na may sira kayo sa tuktok, alam niyo naman hindi magko-comply China dyan. Meron bang ganong reaction?
Actually, mas believe. Dahil yung kalaban higante, the second biggest economy in the world, the biggest armed forces in the world, the biggest navy in the world, etc., etc. Tapos kapitbahay mo, di ba? Kapitbahay mo, hindi malayo sa'yo eh. Halos kadikit mo. Nandun ka sa bunganga ng dragon. Kaya, sila, lalo na yung Vietnam, na halimbawa, in recent memory, ay nakipagyera sa China.
Yes.
Twice. At tinalo ang China. Pero hindi nang ahas na magsampa ng kaso.
Okay.
Kaya nga nung nagkita kami, nung pumunta ako sa kanila, noong 2013, kasama ko si Barry Gutierrez, tsaka yung chief legal ko. Kausap namin yung defense chief ng Vietnam, yung intelligence chief, at saka yung deputy foreign minister. Bilib na bilib sila dun sa ginawa natin.
Okay, Ami, Ronald, anyway, ito, Ami, baka pwedeng balita to sa inyo. No? We have joining us our resource, Pulse Asia President Ronald Holmes on the line. This is regarding the most recent survey by Pulse Asia. Professor Ronald Holmes.
Hi, Professor.
Hi, good afternoon. Good morning from where I am.
Okay, ano unahin natin, Prof? Yung urgent national concerns ng taong bayan regarding issues here in the Philippines, o should we jump in dun sa senatorial survey? Ano ba mas juicy?
Well, depende na yan kung anong gusto yung pag-usapan. Kung kasi tayo, ibang gusto pag-usapan.
Siyempre, ang mga tao, ang unang hinihintay yung
doon tayo sa karera. Doon tayo sa karera.
Senatorial, no?
Professor.
Lalo na, Pulse Asia ito. Hindi ito madalas maglabas, hindi katulad ng ibang mga survey. Kaya hindi ito 2-5, no? Mga kwanto, siguro mga 1-5.
Okay. Prof, top 5 dun sa survey. Sino lumalabas?
Well, doon sa top 5, nandyan at least this snapshot of the survey, si Erwin, si Tito Soto, si Pia Cayetano, si Ben Tulfo, at si Digong Duterte. Although si Digong Duterte ay tied for third up to 6, and then tying from 5th to 8 is Bongo.
Okay.
Professor, did you supply the names or sila mismo ang bahala yung mga respondents?
We supplied the names. There are 68 names that included resident political pundit of Storycon.
Kasama yung magkakapatid na Duterte, yung dalawang magkapatid pala, si Baste and Pulong.
Kasama sila.
Okay.
Nandiyan sila sa listahan. And they've been in our list, if I'm not mistaken, since December 2023. The survey, the ulat ng Bayan survey in December.
Prof, ano yung batayan nyo sa pagsama ng mga pangalan?
May mga, of course, the re-election is the ones that can probably go back to the Senate. There are people who more or less express their intent. We also check certain personalities, whether they're political personalities or people in government. And then there are certain names that are suggested by political groups. Not necessarily just the mainstream political groups, but people who want to see certain changes in the composition of the Senate.
Yung isang interesting dyan, Professor, ay yung kay Digong ba, dahil sinabi ni Vice President Sara, 3 yung tatakbo na Duterte. Yung kay President Digong ba, interchangeable sa kanyang mga anak? Yung kanyang taas na survey, is that basically a brand na pwedeng i-transfer kay Baste or kay Pulong?
Well, I cannot say whether, well, definitely there's a brand, but whether it is something interchangeable, whether it splits, definitely it tends to split. No? The former president is still in the upper half of the top 12, but the two sons are out of contention, at least if you look at if the elections were held at the time that we conducted the survey.
Okay, Professor.
So
Yes, this is in contrast to the two Tulfos who are on the top 5. That's Erwin Tulfo at number 1, and Ben Tulfo, his brother, at number 4. So in this case,
brand.
pasok silang dalawa. Kaiba dun sa Duterte na pasok yung tatay, pero yung mga anak ata wala man lang dun sa top 12.
Parang hindi yata sinama.
Most probably, yung Tulfo is really a result of with this more continuous exposure to media, since they have a show of their own, compared to, let's say, the Duterte sons, who occasionally make pronouncements that are captured by the courts, but not as frequent as, let's say, the media presence of Ben or Erwin Tulfo, for that matter.
Okay.
So are you seeing any particular issue driving the numbers? Halimbawa, is it just plain name recall? Branding lang ba yan? Ano yung nakikita niyo? Are you seeing any particular trend sa preferences at this point?
None on the issues, because if you go through the issues, basically what has happened over the last few elections, or over our elections, is that these people, in order to garner more support, will embrace any and all issues that are urgent from the perspective of the public.
Hmm.
Or
So
maybe,
hindi necessarily also yung mga partisan leanings wala din yon. You can be either anti-administration or whatever. Okay lang, hindi siya factor.
Sabi nga ng isang kasama namin sa politika and political science, mga damit lang yan, pwedeng itapon. So, nagbabago-bago naman sila ng damit.
In the next 10 months, Professor, alin dyan sa listahan na yan ang malaki pa yung possibility na magbago? Or lahat ba yan pwede pa magbago in the next 10 months? Or yung last 6 na lang?
Well, pwede pa magbago, Ronald, kasi ang natin dito, ang baseline natin talaga dito, yung survey that will come after the filing the candidacy. So in our case, that's the December survey, the Ulan ng Bayan, our own survey. And we do see changes there because the changes that we normally see in our survey would be an increase in terms of the number of names that people select. Right now, I think there's an average of about 8 to 9 names being selected. In some regions, they have a full slate, kunyari Visayas, Mindanao. Now, the additional names that they will put in will really depend on how the other candidates will campaign and try to grab or appeal to the voters for that matter.
okay, Professor Holmes, I'm looking at the list again, and number 1 is Erwin Tulfo, and then the percentage voting there, it says 58%. Is that a normal number? Is that a high number or a normal number or a low number? I'm presuming that should be upwards of close to 90%? Pag number 1 ka?
It's a normal number because people don't necessarily vote for, there's the top in the senatorial race in actual results do not get 90% last week.
Okay.
They normally get the same figure that we're seeing right now.
Okay.
But you should also note that people who were leading in the races in the past, suddenly there was an issue, they slid down. No? So it's a question of really holding on to the support that is expressed at this point in time. And since voting is really in the country among Filipinos is dispositional, if a scandal hits a person, or there's something that is brought out that exposes the negative side of a particular individual, it will have a negative impact on the candidate.
Kaya, Professor, itong voting for ay normal itong numbers na ito. Dahil usually ang mataas, yung binabanggit ni Patrick na 90%. Di ba kung yun, usapin ng name recall? Doon mataas.
Okay.
Awareness yun. And
Yes,
those
awareness,
who are competing for the top position, basically have universal awareness. No? Pag hindi universal awareness mo, in our case, we define it as anything above 90. Ang tanong lang naman doon, simple, Ronald.
Kilala.
Binabasa, narinig, napanood na ba kayo tungkol dito sa particular na individual? Masasabi nila, narinig nila yung pangalan, but kakilala pa nila. Nasa top of mind pa ng mga butante yun. So, yun ang problema ng mga ibang kandidato. So, they would really have to spend more time really introducing themselves, introducing their advocacy. And that's the reason why people who are popular have a headway in terms of the election. They need not actually increase the level or the depth of awareness about themselves on the part of the public.
Okay, like the Tulfo.
Professor, meron din kayong survey on top concerns of Filipinos. May nakikita ba kayo dong correlation, man lang kahit konti, between the concerns and the preferences, voting preferences?
Kung naalala ko yung aming mga post-tabulation, wala hindi siya nagre-register. So yung mga nangunguna, plus those concerns, hindi naman, for example, someone who's in the bottom of the list who is known to be advocating a particular issue, the preference of that person does not necessarily increase despite the concern for that specific issue. So let's say the concern for this specific issue is defending the country's territorial integrity. The ones who have asserted a position on that do not necessarily gain any ground or lose any ground with respect to voting preference.
Professor Holmes, what does this list, this survey ranking tell us? What does it tell us about people's preferences?
It basically tells us that we need to engage in political education pathway.
Okay. That was quick. Okay.
So most urgent national concerns. So, lilipat na ba tayo doon sa most urgent national concerns?
Can we see the numbers at least now?
Yes.
I think on top of that list is inflation still, no?
Still.
It's still inflation, and I'll read what we have right here. It's inflation number one at 77%, followed by pay increase at 44%. The third is poverty reduction at 32%, jobs at 30%, and at number 5, it's corruption, 22%. So yan ang top 5. There are other concerns too, but those are the top 5. Inflation, increase in pay, poverty reduction, jobs, and corruption. That's the top 5.
And I think if you look at the survey, Patrick, you can look at the administration rating with regard to these urgent concerns. They're all less than majority, and the disapproval, let's say, for the top concern, which is the high prices of basic commodities, is a significant majority. 3 out of 4 Filipinos disapprove of the administration's performance on controlling inflation. So that to me is a slighting number. It means maybe the public doesn't see this problem being addressed. And among the issues that the public think the president should focus on and discuss during the SONA, or more specifically what he plans to do, is still controlling inflation. And among the people, when we ask them, what do you think are the promises that have been met by the Marcos administration, one promise that has not been met. Only 4% are saying that the promise in terms of bringing down the price of rice has been met. 20% do not feel that there's any political promise during the campaign or during the proclamation inauguration speech that has been met by the current administration.
Professor, itong survey na ito sa mga concerns ng mga mamamayan, meron bang significant na difference do sa mga previous similar survey na ginawa nyo? Kumbaga, institutional memory ay yan ba ay almost practically the same?
Almost the same, and we do have a table, Ronald, on the media release that shows that although heightened yung concern about controlling inflation, which has always been the top concern, and hindi mo bumababa presyo ng mga bilihin. So the top 4 concerns, which are all material, have always been at the top of our surveys in the past. You do have certain instances, for example, during the time of Pinoy, during the campaign fighting graft and corruption, and in the earlier years, Pinoy's administration, fighting graft and corruption was a concern. So there's this expectation on the part of the public that when the president signals that this is an important issue, the public also feels that it's an urgent concern. Under Digong, it's the same thing. Fighting criminality became a more urgent issue. So you see that's, I think, very important to note that there's the signaling effect of the president. On the part of this president, however, we don't see the effect because maybe there's not so much attention being given to these concerns compared to, let's say, other concerns. This is not to say the president is not doing his job. It's just that it's a hard job to begin with.
Professor, yun ang itatanong ko, yung corruption. Yung mga surveys nyo na conducted during the Marcos administration, lagi bang mataas yun? Parang ngayon, I'm not sure kung ngayon lang siya tumaas eh. Naging top 5 na ba siya in the past?
Yes.
Under the Marcos administration.
It has always been in the top 5, Ami. Tapos, ang isang kakaiba dito, with regard to fighting graft and corruption, the administration is not getting majority approval. Actually, only 1 out of 4 approving of their performance in fighting graft and corruption. Mas marami nagdi-disapprove. Tapos kung ikukumpara natin to dun sa mga nakarang administrasyon, under Pinoy and under Digong, we did not see a drop in terms of approval ratings on the national administration's performance on many issues. Until maybe after the second year. So, ito, dalawang issue na lang ang majority approval, protecting the welfare of OFWs and responding to the needs of people affected by calamities. Even on the defense of the country's territorial integrity, since we're commemorating the 8th anniversary success, 48% lang approving at 16% ang disapproving, 34% ang undecided. Which strikes me as something that really requires also attention. You're giving so much attention to this issue, and yet you're not generating majority approval. What's wrong? What's happening? I think they need a political advisor and with the name Ronald Llamas. Nilaglag ko ba?
Mawawalan kami ng pandit dito, Prof.
Prof, kung titignan natin yung top 4 at titignan natin yung datos ng gobyerno, parang may dysfunction. Dahil kiniklaim ng gobyerno na bumababa ang inflation, less than 4%. Kiniklaim ng gobyerno, bumababa ang unemployment. No? So yung top 4 issues dyan ay iba dun sa pinapresent ng gobyerno. Nasaan yung mali? Nasaan yung kwan? Yung gobyerno ba? Yung data nila? Or yung perception ng mga tao?
Well, kaya nga, Ronald, it's not disjoint kasi, yung public opinion might be different from the opinion of people in positions of power. So, kinakailangan i-revisit ng gobyerno yung kanyang posisyon batay sa paniniwala ng publiko. And I think that's the importance of surveys. It's not that you should be succumb to what the survey says. It's not that you should follow what the survey says, but it's a manifestation, illustration of how people feel. So kung sinasabi mo ay bumababa presyo ng bilihin, actually hindi bumababa kasi nandun pa yung inflation. Nananatili siya mataas. Iba yung bumababa. Kasi pag sinabi bumaba ang inflation rate pero hindi bumaba presyo.
Right.
Yeah.
Bumaba lang yung...
Especially food inflation.
Bumaga lang yung pagtaas. Parang ganun yun, di ba? Parang
Bumaga
ganun
lang yung pagtaas, hindi bumaba ang presyo. So may iba yun. So, and normally government would really take on a slant that we're doing things, except that, the question is for government, why is it that the public doesn't see essentially the outcomes of whatever you claim you're doing? And how can you shape people's minds? It's really how they feel, their own existence and their own experiences.
Okay, Professor Holmes, was there any, to your recollection, in your memory, was there any administration in which this top urgent concerns were different, na iba? Ang mga urgent, na hindi presyo, hindi trabaho, hindi inflation, hindi corruption ang pinakamalaking problema ng Pilipino.
Halimbawa, crime.
Yung inflation has always been there. Crime, fighting criminality was a concern under that early the third administration. Fighting graft and corruption became one of the top 3 concerns under Pinoy. Fighting graft and corruption was a concern during the Gloria Macapagal administration. So while inflation remained at the top, what constituted the top 5 would change. There were occasions, I remember, when the concern about the environment also increased because of the calamities that were really disastrous of yung effect. But not to the extent that it dislodged inflation from the top. It's always been at the top.
How about, Professor,
so, Professor,
yung
hindi
concern?
ba katakataka na yung West Philippine Sea issue, which is widely discussed, multimedia, parang hindi siya top of mind. Parang malayo ba sa bituka yun ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino na it's not one of your top concerns?
Hindi naman siya malayo sa bituka. It's just that relative to the other concerns, it's not really as urgent. The other way to look at it, is maybe that they feel that the government is attending to it. They may not necessarily agree with what government is doing, but the sense that, or the realization that government is actually doing something about it means that when you ask them the question, what concern should government attend to?
Yes.
Since alam na nila that it is being attended to, it will not in any way figure in terms of their responses.
Does that interpretation also apply to crime or criminality, Professor? Meaning to say na wala siya doon sa top 5, hindi big sabihin na payapa ang ating mga lansangan, pero mas maraming problema Pilipino? Or has there been some palpable change in the peace and order situation?
Related doon sa tanong ni Patrick, Professor, dahil yung panahon ni Digong, parang yun yung nag-bolt sa kanya into the presidency, yung issue ng crime. So, meron bang dramatic na pagbabago dun sa criminality as a major concern ng mga tao?
I will have to ask the Philippine National Police. No, but no, seriously, again, it's relative to all other concerns.
It's relative.
So, kung ang sikmura mo at ang inyong patay ang pangangailangan ay talagang hindi na tutugunan, hindi na nakamit, di ang nangarin ito sa pamahalaan ay tugunan ito. So, maaaring yung personal safety is still a concern. Criminality is still a concern, but relative to the other concerns, it's not as important for them. They can find ways to prevent being victimized, but they feel that what's more important is that prices are down, there's more jobs, the pay is more stable, and corruption that is not as pervasive.
Napanood ko, Professor, last week, yung isang survey firm na sinasabi na sa kanilang focus group discussion ay very emotional na yung issue ng West Philippine Sea. Kaya ang kanilang conclusion ay ito ay magiging election issue. From your vantage point, ay meron din ba kayong ganong indication?
The survey, if you just look at the concerns, it may become an election issue. It depends on who would use it as an election. Who would use it as a basis for his or her campaign. Kasi yun ang ano dyan eh. And then how they would play up that particular issue would depend largely on their communication strategy. But at this point, if you range it against all other concerns, it is not as urgent.
Okay, Professor Holmes, I was looking, if you can go back to the Senatorial survey, I was looking at the list at saka medyo, if you go a few pages down, nandito pala yung pangalan ni Ronald Llamas. Okay. Gusto ko lang malaman, Prof.
Sino
Pinasingit ba niya or this is top of mind ng mga tao?
Sino nagpasok yan?
It is extremely confidential.
Ayun. Don't worry. Wala ka sa...
Sumisikat na kasi Ronald Llamas sa pagiging resident
Wala sa margin of error.
ng Storycon.
Wala ka sa Magic Well. Pero ito.
Pero mas mataas ako doon sa Kingmaker.
Yun.
At saka kay Kibuloy.
Kay Kibuloy. Mas mataas ako doon sa kay Kibuloy. Yun.
I'm sorry guys, I need to go. I have to go back to the meeting right now.
Okay.
Salamat, Prof.
Thank you for your time.
Salamat, Prof.
Thank you, Professor.
That was Professor Ronald Llamas, Professor Ronald Holmes of the Pulse Asia, President of Pulse Asia.
Sino kaya yung subtil na nagsama sa akin?
Yun. Baka naman kinausap mo si Professor Holmes.
Oo nga,
para
sila
sa
daw nag-supply
Tingin ko-
Sila nag-supply ng meds.
Tingin ko may nanutil dyan eh. No? Tingin ko merong sobrang galit sa akin. Pinasok yung pangalan ko.
Mas mataas ka naman sa Son of God at sa Kingmaker.
Pwede na rin akong gumawa ng sarili kong libro.
Yun.
Diba? Or sarili kong sekta.
Kunin mo yung writer ng Kingmaker. Pwede. Kilala naman natin yun.
Hindi, Manny Bugato yung kukunin ko.
Ayun. Pulitzer.
Oh,
Dapat may
Pulitzer.
award na talaga.
Pulitzer yung kukunin ko. Ano ba kayo?
Okay, you're watching Storycon on One News. We just need to take a quick break, but we will be right back. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group. Welcome back to the Story Conference. I'm Patrick Paez, and with me are Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star and Ronald Llamas, a senatorial candidate. Hindi ko na mabilang anong rank nun pero suffice it to say, ang importante, higher than the Son of God and the Kingmaker.
Hindi ko gusto yung tawa ni Ami.
Yun. Tawa si Ami. Yun. Well, Ronald,
Bale, may pag-asa pa eh. You still have several months to
kaya.
rise.
Hindi, ako na yan, build up papunta sa 2028.
Yun.
Yung target ko, 2028.
Okay.
Tumabi sila lahat.
May nakita rin
Sige,
ako
sige.
conspiracy na ganyan na vice presidential daw ang balak mo. Parang may ganun. Galing doon sa
Si
isang
Jules
journal.
Toronyo,
Yun, oo. Yun daw pinaplano mo. But anyway, Ronald, you were mentioning a while ago during the break that let's go back to the celebration or observance of the anniversary of the Hague ruling.
Nabanggit kanina ni Ami, pero hindi natin nasundan. Maraming celebration ngayon. Halimbawa, yung Albert de Rosario Institute. Nandiyan sila sa McKinley, nagse-celebrate sila. Ang dami mga ambassadors at saka international at saka local media na nandun, no? Nandun yung French ambassador, American ambassador, Japanese ambassador, etc. Nandun sila lahat. Nandun din si Secretary Anyo. Tumayo siya sa stage at kasama yung mga ambassador at nagpa-interview sa labas bago siya umalis. At medyo nilapitan ko, nagkwentuhan din kami ng konti. No, ni Secretary Anyo. Nandun din si Rene Almendras dahil siya ay naging foreign secretary noong panahon ni Pinoy, so in-interview rin siya. Kaya, ayun, very significant dahil nandun yung mga natitira na kasama sa UNCLOS delegation, katulad namin ni General Bautista, Ambassador Bataclan, at si Justice Carpio, nandun kami. No? Tapos, meron ding demonstrasyon sa Zambales. Pumunta yung mga mangingisda sa dagat at naglabas ng mga placards na atin ito. So, kinoffer din ng media yan. At meron ding pagkilos dito sa Manila tungkol sa anibersaryo. So, medyo maraming mga grupo yung nag-celebrate the day before at saka during ngayon. Dahil napakahalaga niyan. Hindi lamang para sa Pilipinas, para din sa region at saka para din sa freedom of navigation na makikinabang yung buong mundo.
Yun. Okay.
Yung atin ito, ang proposal nila to declare na July 12 as West Philippine Sea Day.
Yes.
Yan yung story namin about that atin ito thing.
So I guess you're okay for that.
Anyo,
Yes. Dahil
yung si Secretary Anyo, sabi niya, the Philippines will rise above the fear instigated by military and economic might, real or imagined. Yan yung sinabi niya kanina.
Real or imagined.
Yun yung sa strat-based interview.
Gusto ko lang ipaliwanag
That's a dig at Chinese military superiority when he said military might,
Yes.
real or imagined. Pinag-usapan lang natin kahapon yung aircraft carrier ng China na sabi nga ng Navy spokesman si Admiral that it's not a threat.
Yeah.
They don't look at it as a threat.
Mas trial run.
Oo, kasi nagpa-practice pa lang daw yung aircraft carrier.
Pero yung tanong mo nga kanina, kung okay lang sa akin yung West Philippine Sea Day, yung anniversary natin sa UNCLOS, huwag natin kalimutan, itong mga grupo na ito, noong 2013, sila rin yung nag-propose sa Kongreso na pangalanan ng West Philippine Sea yung ating EEZ.
Okay. So,
ibig sabihin, hindi ito ay natural sa kanila. Dahil sa kanila rin nanggaling yung pangalan na West Philippine Sea. No? Kaya nung pinopropose ni Senator Risa, ay hindi siya bago. Dahil nandun siya sa Kongreso nung pinopose yan.
Sa inyo pala galing yun?
Medyo.
Medyo lang. And I read somewhere that ang original na tawag pala dyan is South Sea. Niwala yung China Sea. It was originally known as the South Sea. Nasingit lang yung China doon sa pangalan.
Hindi dapat nilalagay yung China Pero bakit doon sa Indian Ocean? Di naman kinakamkam ng India yung ocean na yun.
Well, also Philippine Sea, Ami, we can't. It's not like it's called Philippine Sea, but that doesn't mean it's territorial,
Ngayon, Philippine rice, yung Benham rice.
Yun. Okay.
Di naman tayo naglalagay ng mga imaginary, yung 10 dash line na ngayon, di naman tayo naglalagay ng gano'n, nagising tayo, gusto na natin yon. Atin na lahat yun.
Yung pinapangalanan lang natin, Ami, ay yung ating legally, morally, at saka factually na based sa international law ay teritoryo natin. No? Hindi tayo lumalabas doon.
Okay. Ami, Ronald, in the U.S., President Joe Biden just faced the media in a rare solo news conference.
Yes.
That's as his political future hangs in the balance, with a growing number of allies wanting him out of the November race. Okay, we have this story from CNN.
Is President Joe Biden up to the challenge of running the country for the next 4 years? Inquiring minds the world over want to know. And at Thursday evening's solo news conference, Biden with an answer.
The consideration is that I think I'm the most qualified person to run for president. I beat him once, and I will beat him again.
2 weeks ago, Biden faced off in the first presidential debate against presumed Republican nominee Donald Trump. Biden has been facing political pressure to exit the presidential race ever since, due to his poor performance. Thursday's conference has been seen as a political make or break for his political future, but a gaffe by Biden raised even more concerns and eyebrows.
Look, I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president, but I think she was not qualified to be president.
The news conference considered high stakes at this crucial moment in Biden's presidency and for his re-election bid. While Biden's news conference at the NATO summit may have ordinarily focused on his meeting with world leaders, this time Biden used his time to address the elephant in the room.
The idea that senators and congressmen running for office worry about the ticket is not unusual. And I might add, there are at least 5 presidents running or incumbent presidents who had lower numbers than I have now.
I'm Sherelle Hubbard reporting.
Okay, before his press conference, Biden spoke at a NATO event along with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and there was a moment of gaffe. Let's watch this.
Now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
I'm better.
You are a hell of a lot better.
Thank you so much, Mr. President.
Okay, Ami, what do you think? Well, fearless forecast. This is American politics anyway. Your opinions, I'm sure, won't paint you to a corner.
Verbal.
What do you think? Will he
Pwede
step
kong
down?
verbal gaffe lang yung Vice President Trump and President Putin of Ukraine, ha? Kaya lang, ewan ko baka natin-tension because napakalaki nga ng expectation na you will have to,
Right.
to improve your public performances.
Nung debate,
Kaya lang, he's 81 years old, eh. Ang sinasabi naman ng mga doktor, talaga daw namang merong mga normal memory lapses kapag ganyang edad. Pero ang sinasabi naman ng mga supporter niya, it doesn't mean na yung competence mo is under question actually. Diba? Depende yan sa yung iba sinasabi, ageism yan, yung mga supporter niya. On the other hand, pati si George Clooney, alam naman natin, na kailangan mag-giveaway siya doon sa winnable person.
it's all about image eh.
Ewan ko.
Ang mahalaga rito image eh. Nung papunta ng debate, ay statistically tied na sila ni Trump. After the debate, ay lumaki yung agwat nila ni Trump. So, tama naman yung sabi ni President Biden na may ilang mga presidential candidate yung Democrats na going into the election ay mas mababa, but eventually won. Pero dito kasi, ang tinitignan natin is the movement of numbers. Nagsimula sila na tayo at ngayon yung kanyang trajectory ay pababa. Yung movement of numbers ay delikado para kay Biden. Kaya doon nagwo-worry yung kanyang mga supporters. Halimbawa, nung debate, na ipagpalit din niya yung pangalan ni Putin at saka ni Trump.
Zelensky.
Hindi, nung debate, napagpalit niya yung dalawa. Yung kay Zelensky, yung press con niya. Pero during the debate, na ipagpalit niya. Tapos binanggit din niya na yung kanyang anak ay namatay sa Iraq. na hindi naman namatay sa... Yung ganun ba, na yung imagery na lumalabas ay medyo kontra kay Biden at this point. At dumadami yung mga Democrats na senador at saka kongresista at saka mga funders. Yun, mahalaga yung funders. Na nire-request siya na mag-step down habang may panahon pa. Paano hahabulin nila yan eh? At mukhang habang nag-i-scale up yung mga members ng Democrats, nag-i-scale up na i-request na mag-step down si Biden, nag-i-scale up naman si Biden na hindi siya aatras. So, medyo...
Fearless forecast. Of course, we're outsiders watching.
Yeah.
We're watching from the outside. But a fearless forecast, do you think he will step aside?
Well, kung dadami. Ngayon kasi, hindi pa majority yung nagre-request sa kanya na mag-step down. Ito yung mga medyo mga ngahas. Ito yung willing stake yung kanilang political capital dun sa pag-request kay Biden.
Some of these Democratic congressmen and senators who are asking him to step aside, there's worry na baka madamay sila.
Tama.
I think there's that concern
Tama.
na pati sila madamay, pati sila matalo.
Pero,
that's a real concern.
Pero halimbawa, yung mga funders, hindi naman sila kandidato eh.
Right. No? That's another concern.
Yes, yeah.
But early on, we heard, at least from John King after that CNN debate, na ang unang natakot talaga were the funders.
Yeah. Dahil mahalaga sa kanila yon, dahil tataya sila sa isang kandidato, medyo sasama sila doon sa mananalo. Di ba? Medyo tatamaan sila yung kanilang mga negosyo. Pero yung leadership ng Democrat sa Senado, si Schumer, ay sinusuportahan pa rin si Biden, no?
Nancy Pelosi is no longer as solidly behind him.
Yes.
Pero
wala siyang position ngayon eh. Si Obama at saka si Pelosi mukhang papunta dun sa pag-request kay Biden na mag-step down kahit hindi pa openly. No? Parang
Although si Pelosi, si Pelosi is an octogenarian eh.
Also.
Baka ibuelta yan sa kanya eh. Ikaw din eh. Matanda ka na rin.
Pero
kasi
hindi
yun
siya
ang
kandidato
pinaka-main
kasi.
issue kay Biden.
Yun ang kaibahan
At saka
ni Pelosi.
siguro hintayin natin yung numbers after this, nag-NATO na eh. Tapos nag-conference nga. Tingnan natin yung numero kasi ang sinasabi ng mga supporters ni Biden, hindi naman bumabagsak ng ganong kalaki.
Well, let's see,
Considering
after
all
this.
the verbal gaps, ha?
Yeah.
Oo, yun ang sinasabi nila. Kaya may pag-asa daw na mag-improve actually kung medyo aayos pa. Kaya titingnan natin. Mahirap mag-predict ngayon, di ba? Napaka-volatile ng ano eh.
Wala pa kasi...
Depende sa ano eh. We'll have to wait for the number siguro by next week meron yan eh.
Yes.
Baka by the weekend meron na yan eh.
Inuulit ko, Ami, kahit hindi ganun kalaki yung agwat, ay ilang linggo pa lang eh. Ilang linggo pa lang since ng presidential debate. Kaya hindi pa ganun kahaba yung panahon. May gestation period yan. Pero in spite ng gestation period, ay medyo dramatic na yung pagbaba ni Biden. Kaya ang tinitingnan dyan, yung movement of numbers. Kung sasama ka, kung sa next survey ay bababa pa, kahit hindi pa ganun kalaki, may movement pa baba eh. It can become a trend. No? Yun yung doon kinakabahan yung mga Democrats. At wag nating kalimutan, meron silang internal data analytics na hindi nila nilalabas. Pero doon lang gagaling yung kanilang mga pangamba. Hindi yung public na survey, yung kanilang internal
So kumukuha ng kumpiyansa si Biden na ituloy yung kanyang ano? Is he also, baka naman there's also numbers, internal numbers that he's looking at that tells him that he will win.
Hindi, merong mga nagsasabi yung power ng incumbency. No? Malaking dagdag yon sa labanan kung ikaw ay incumbent. Pero si Trump, incumbent din natalo eh. Diba? Ikalawa ay, siyempre, may element dyan ng hubris. You're the most powerful man in the world. Diba? Tapos ngayon,
apparently not.
Tapos ngayon, pinapababa ka. Ibig sabihin, hindi rin ganun, may element din ng pride at saka hubris eh. Diba? Pag nandun ka sa ganung klaseng posisyon.
Okay, but in a tight race like this, Ronald, in a tight and highly polarized election like this, do you think it will even matter whether is somebody who has apparent or obvious lapses already? Will it even move the votes that much? Kasi parang yung mga Democrats, no matter what, it's an anti-Trump vote.
Yes,
so it doesn't matter who the Democratic Party is fielding.
Pero ang problema mo kasi hindi push over si Trump eh. No? At ang at stake dito ay yung mundo. Diba? Hindi lang to usapin ng
Yeah,
Democrats at
but it's the
Republicans.
Americans who are voting. Even if you say there's an implication the rest of
Because
the
if
world, the Americans are voting. In fact, ngayon may bagong term na lumalabas, tinatawag na blue MAGA. Ito naman yung katumbas ng mga MAGA ni Trump. Ito naman yung mga diehard talaga na nakikita na nila.
Mga Tea Party na Democrats.
Na Democrats. Nakikita nila na obviously na ganyan ang lagay ng kanilang presidente. Pero tiwala pa rin sila. He's a dynamo. You know, they have all these words. So they're being now dubbed within the Democratic circles as the Blue MAGA. The Blue MAGA.
Ang hirap lang talaga idikit yung pagiging dynamo kay Trump.
Hindi ba mas mahirap idikit kayo, no?
Hindi,
Biden
pinag-aawayan na lang siguro ngayon yung mga undecided. Medyo malaki din yung segment na yun, di ba? Merong ganong yung mga botante, both sides
Before
yun na
the
lang ang pinag-uawak yan. Kasi medyo, yung kung pro-Trump ka, talagang
Hindi na magbabago yan.
Ko, lalo mga
Hindi na magbabago yan, Ami.
Pero malaki pa rin yung segment ng undecided
Pero
siguro
that was-
yan na lang yung pinoproblema ngayon.
Ang problema, Ami, that was before the debate. Ang sabi nga nila, yung election na ito, dahil may electoral college will be determined by a small undecided minority.
Okay.
Pero ngayon, nagbabago yun. No? Nagbabago yun.
Lumaki nga.
Dahil dati kasi ay lamang si Trump sa electoral college, pero lamang si Biden sa popular vote. Ngayon, lamang si Trump sa pareho. Popular vote at saka sa electoral college. Kaya kinakabahan yung mga Democrats. Dumadami yung kinakabahan.
Okay. Ami, Ronald, thanks for joining the Storycon today. Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star, and Ronald Llamas, our resident political pundit. Join us again on Monday at 4 p.m. Thanks for watching the Storycon. I'm Patrick Paez. We are One News, all sides, all the time. This is the Story Conference Group or the Storycon Group.